Where the silence began to speak, they said, "Time heals everything, but time does not always heal. Sometimes it simply waits. Sometimes it holds stories that are not finished. Sometimes it brings people back to the place where everything first began, even when they never planned to return." Years had passed since Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves last stood beside each other, in that quiet place behind the movie set, where laughter felt real and where silence felt safe. They lived separate lives, made different choices, and walked different roads. The world believed they had moved on. The world believed their story had ended. But the heart never follows the world's timeline. The truth was simple and silent. They never forgot each other. The story begins on a quiet morning when Sandra returned to the studio where their first famous film had been shot. Not for work, not for interviews, but because something inside her felt unfinished. She had been invited to speak at an event about her early career. She agreed, but deep inside she knew there was another reason she came. Maybe she wanted to face old memories. Maybe she wanted to feel something she once lost. Maybe she just wanted to see if the past still lived somewhere inside her. The studio looked different now. Newer walls, brighter lights, louder voices. Yet something familiar still breathed in the air. It felt like walking into a dream she had tried to fold away carefully, but could never really hide. As she walked down a hallway, she stopped outside an old door. Behind that door used to be a small break area, the very place where she and Keanu drank coffee and shared quiet conversations between takes. She remembered how his smile was never loud. It was warm, patient, almost shy. She remembered how he listened, really listened, like every word she said mattered. She remembered how safe she felt beside him, even when she said nothing at all. That memory stung a little. She touched the door gently, then pulled her hand away. She was older now, wiser in some ways, more fragile in others. Life had given her joy, pain, success, heartbreak, and lessons. But no lesson had ever helped her forget him. "I hope you're doing well," she whispered to the empty hallway, but she did not know he was closer than she imagined. Keanu had returned to the same studio that very morning, not for work either. He had been asked to do a quiet charity project, something involving helping young actors train in emotional performance. He accepted because helping others always felt like the right thing to do. He liked to be kind in quiet ways. He did not know Sandra was there. He walked through the same halls, remembering the same laughter, the same moments, the same soft, careful connection that never found its voice. His steps were slow, thoughtful, almost heavy with memory. He stopped near that same break room, and he felt something inside him stir. He thought of her. He wondered where she was. He wondered if she was happy. He wondered if she still remembered the way they sat shoulder to shoulder in silence. Then the door opened, and she stepped out. They both froze. It felt like the world stopped breathing. Her eyes widened. His breath caught. Years had passed, yet in that moment, time folded like paper. She whispered first, "Keanu." His voice was soft, almost breaking. "Sandra." They did not run to each other. They did not cry. They simply stood there, seeing each other clearly for the first time in years. And in their eyes lived every memory they never spoke about, every almost, every silence, every feeling left unspoken. Neither knew what would happen next. But both knew one thing clearly: this was not an accident. This was where their story quietly returned to. Life for *. The space between words hallway fell to quiet after their names left each other's lips. The air felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that carried history, the kind that holds everything to people were once too afraid to say. Sandra tried to speak first. Her voice was gentle, almost uncertain, like she was afraid one wrong word would break the moment. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. Keanu nodded slowly. "I didn't know you would be here either." His tone was calm, but his eyes carried something deeper, something like surprise mixed with relief. They both smiled, not the bright kind for cameras, but the small, real kind that comes from somewhere honest, the kind that says, "I know you, even after all this time." They walked together into the break room. It looked different now, cleaner, modern, bigger, but to them, it still felt like the past was hidden in the walls. Sandra sat on the couch quietly. Keanu stood for a moment, unsure. then took a seat across from her. There were so many things they wanted to ask, but instead, they spoke about simple things first: work, life, travel, things that sounded light but carried weight beneath them. "You've been doing so well," she said softly. Watching him carefully, he shrugged a little, not out of pride, but humility. "Just trying to keep going," he answered. Then he looked at her in the same way he used to, like he could see past the smiles she showed the world. "And you? Are you doing okay?" She hesitated. The truth was not easy. She had lived through heartbreak. She had known loss. She had built herself again and again. She had learned how to stay strong even when her heart felt tired. "I'm managing," she said gently. His eyes softened. "You've always been strong." She shook her head slowly. "Strength doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." Her voice broke just a little. He leaned forward slightly, his hands resting together, his posture open, patient. "You don't have to pretend with me." Those words hit her deeper than she expected. For years, she had learned to be strong for everyone. She learned to smile for the world, even when she was breaking inside. But Keanu had always seen past the surface. Even now, after years apart, he still did. She took a quiet breath. "Life has been heavy. A lot changed. And some things I thought I understood. I didn't." He nodded, understanding without needing details. There was a moment of quiet where they simply sat, breathing the same still air, sharing the same invisible ache. Then Keanu spoke again. "I thought about you. A lot," he said gently. Sandra felt her heart beat differently. "I thought about you too," she whispered. They did not look away. The truth had always been there, tucked between the spaces of their lives. It had never disappeared. It had only waited. But life is never simple. And just as the moment felt close to becoming something deeper, voices echoed from the hallway. Assistants, staff, people moving in and out of rooms. Reality returning. Keanu leaned back slightly. The shift subtle but meaningful. And something inside Sandra felt that familiar fear returning. The fear of losing something before he had the chance to live. "Maybe we should talk later," she said softly, unsure. He nodded, but his eyes did not waver. "I would like that." They stood, slowly, carefully. But as they walked toward the hallway, a young assistant rushed toward them, handing Sandra a phone. Her face fell as she read the screen. Keanu saw it. He recognized the pain. Something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked gently. She swallowed hard. "Someone close to me. They're in trouble. I have to go." She tried to stay calm, but her hands were trembling. Keanu stepped closer. "Do you want me to come with you?" She looked at him, eyes full of confusion and emotion. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say, "Don't leave me again." But all she said was, "I don't know," and that uncertainty hung heavy in the air. Because sometimes love does not break from distance. Sometimes it breaks when the world interrupts at the exact moment the heart is finally ready to speak. The moment that changed everything. Sandra left the studio quickly, her steps fast, her heart beating louder than the noise around her. She didn't explain much, just that someone she cared about needed her right now. The hallway lights blurred, and her mind ran faster than her feet. She didn't realize until she reached the parking lot that her hands were shaking. Keanu followed her, but not too closely. He didn't want to overwhelm her. He knew the look in her eyes. It was the look of someone trying to stay strong when the world was suddenly too heavy. He had seen that look in himself too many times. "Sandra," he called gently. She stopped, her back still facing him. She took a slow breath before turning around. Her eyes were glossy, holding fear she didn't want to admit. "My aunt," she said quietly. "She raised me. She's in the hospital. They don't know what's happening yet." Keanu stepped closer. His voice was steady, warm. "Then you're not driving alone." She didn't argue. She didn't pretend to be strong. She simply nodded. They drove together in silence. The city passed by in lights and shadows. The world outside felt distant, unreal. Inside the car, there was only the sound of breathing, the quiet space between two hearts that had once been so close. When they reached the hospital, Sandra moved quickly, but her fear made every step heavy. Keanu stayed close, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his presence like a steadying hand, even without contact. Her aunt was stable but weak. Doctors spoke in calm voices. Medical terms blurred together. Sandra nodded, listened, tried to understand, tried to keep her heart from splitting open. The woman who gave her safety when she had none was now fragile, pale, quiet in a hospital bed. Sandra sat beside her aunt, holding her hand. Her aunt opened her eyes slowly, tired but aware. "You came," she whispered. Sandra smiled softly, though her voice trembled. "Of course I came." Her aunt's gaze drifted past her for a moment, to where Keanu stood quietly near the doorway. Even weak, she recognized him. "You too," her aunt breathed, a tiny smile forming. "You're still connected." Sandra felt heat rise in her chest. Not embarrassment. Something softer. Something painful. Something true. Keanu stepped forward, his voice gentle. "It's good to see you again." Her aunt squeezed Sandra's hand weakly. "Don't waste time," she whispered. "Life is shorter than you think." Sandra's throat closed. Her aunt had always known, always seen, always hoped, but life had never moved the way hearts wished it would. Hours passed. They stayed there together, watching the quiet hum of machines, listening to the slow rhythm of her aunt's breathing. When Sandra finally stepped out into the hallway to get air, Keanu followed. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. "I'm tired of being strong," she whispered. Keanu stood beside her, not touching, just present. "You don't have to be strong right now." Her breath shook. "I'm scared." He didn't say it would be okay. He didn't make promises he couldn't control. Instead, he said something softer. "I'll stay." She looked at him, her eyes full of questions she didn't know how to voice. "Why?" she asked. "After all these years, why are you still here?" His answer was simple. "Because I never really left." Her chest tightened, not with pain this time, but with something that felt like truth finally stepping into the light. But just as warmth began to settle in, a nurse rushed toward them. "Sandra, you need to come. Her condition is changing." Everything inside her dropped. Keanu reached for her hand this time, gently but firmly. "I'm with you," he whispered, and this time, she didn't pull away. When the heart remembers. The room felt colder when they returned. The soft beeping of machines had changed rhythm. Nurses moved with quiet urgency. Sandra's aunt looked smaller somehow, as if life were slipping through her fingers like fine sand. Sandra held her hand again, tighter this time, as if she could anchor her to the world just by touch. Keanu stood beside her, steady and calm, but his eyes were full of empathy. He had known loss too well. He understood the feeling of trying to hold on to someone who was already halfway to somewhere beyond this world. Sandra leaned down and whispered to her aunt, her voice shaking. "I'm here. I'm right here. Please stay with me." Her aunt's eyes fluttered open. There was pain there, yes, but also peace. She didn't speak for a long moment, and when she finally did, her voice was thin, soft, but filled with truth. "My sweet girl, you've always tried to carry everything alone." Sandra's tears fell silently. She didn't try to wipe them away this time. Her aunt slowly turned her gaze to Keanu. "And you?" Keanu stepped closer, his expression gentle. "Yes? Don't let her hide," her aunt whispered. "She loves deeply, but she hides her heart to protect it." Sandra closed her eyes, her chest tightening. Those words felt like someone opening a door she had kept locked for years. Keanu nodded once, slow and sincere. "I understand." Her aunt breathed out softly, her fingers relaxing in Sandra's grasp. "I need you both to remember, life is not promised. Don't waste the chance to love someone the way your heart already does." And then she rested, her breathing softening, her body becoming still in that quiet, fragile way that lets everyone in the room know that the moment is changing. A nurse stepped forward and spoke softly. "She's resting peacefully. You can stay with her as long as you'd like." But everyone understood what that really meant. Sandra leaned forward, placing her forehead gently against her aunt's hand. She didn't sob. She didn't break. She just breathed, long and slow, like she was trying to memorize the moment. Keanu placed his hand on her back, not pushing, not pulling, just letting her feel someone was there. Someone solid. Someone who wouldn't disappear. They stayed like that for a long time, until Sandra finally whispered, "Let's go outside." They walked out into the hospital courtyard, where night had settled softly over the city. The sky was a deep blue, scattered with faint stars. Sandra sat on a bench, hands folded together, breathing slowly. Keanu sat beside her, close enough to offer warmth, far enough to let her choose the moment. She spoke first, her voice low. "I've spent so much of my life trying to be strong for everyone. I thought if I stayed busy, kept moving, kept smiling, I could outrun the fear of losing people." Her voice trembled. "But I was wrong. You can't outrun loss, and you can't outrun love either." Keanu listened. He never interrupted her when her heart was speaking. She looked at him, and her eyes were clear, even through the grief. "When we drifted apart years ago, it wasn't because I didn't care. I cared too much. I didn't know how to handle it. I was scared we would ruin something beautiful." He nodded slowly. "I was scared too." The honesty between them felt like air finally being let into a sealed room. "Do you think it's too late?" Sandra whispered. Keanu turned his head toward her, his voice soft but certain. "It's only too late if we choose to walk away again." Her breath caught. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned her shoulder against his, just a small touch. Gentle, careful, but real. And he leaned back. No promises, no dramatic confessions, just truth resting quietly between them. But love is not done testing hearts, because the very next morning, a headline appeared online: photographs of Sandra and Keanu holding hands leaving the hospital. And the world was ready to talk. When the world wakes up, headlines spread fast. It didn't matter that they hadn't said anything. It didn't matter what the truth was. The world loved a story, especially one they had been waiting years to confirm. Photos of Sandra and Keanu leaving the hospital were everywhere. Comments flooded social media. News outlets began to speculate, twisting moments into meaning, turning a private night of grief and support into something loud and public. Are they together again? Have they been hiding it for years? This explains everything. Sandra saw the headlines first. Her heart didn't break, but it tightened. She knew how relentless attention could be. She knew how easily love could be damaged when the world tried to own it. She sat at her kitchen table, the morning quiet except for the sound of her tea cooling beside her. Her phone buzzed non-stop: calls, messages, interviews requested. She ignored them all. Then the doorbell rang. She already knew who it was. Keanu stood outside, hands in his pockets, his expression soft, steady, familiar. The moment she saw him, the noise of the world faded a little. "You saw it?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah." She stepped aside and let him in. He walked in without hesitation, like he had walked into her home 1,000 times before. They sat on the couch. Silence hung between them, not uncomfortable, just full. Sandra took a slow breath. "I don't want the world to destroy whatever this is again." Keanu's gaze was calm, thoughtful. "We can choose how much we let in this time." She shook her head softly. "We tried that once. We stayed quiet. We stayed careful. We stayed safe. And we lost each other anyway." He didn't argue. She was right. People think love breaks from fights, or betrayal, or tragedy. But sometimes love breaks from silence, from waiting too long, from thinking there will always be another chance. Sandra leaned forward, elbows on her knees, face in her hands. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of losing you. Scared of losing myself. Scared of making the wrong choice." Keanu shifted closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his presence. "I'm scared too," he said softly. "But I've learned something. Grief teaches us what matters." She lifted her head slightly. "When you lose people," he continued, voice steady, "you realize the worst thing is not choosing wrong. The worst thing is not choosing at all." Her eyes met his, slow, searching, fragile. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she whispered. He nodded, his voice almost a breath. "Then we face the world together." Sandra closed her eyes for a moment, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel hope without guilt. But just as something warm began to grow in the air between them, reality arrived uninvited. Sandra's phone buzzed again, this time. She looked. It was her agent. "You need to come in today. Damage control meeting. The media storm is growing." The words were sharp, cold, real, and just like that, choice returned. If she went to the meeting, the story would become a negotiation. Public image versus private truth. Reputation versus heart. Keanu saw her expression shift and understood. Instantly, you don't have to decide right now, he said. But she did. Because love only survives when chosen boldly. She took a slow breath and stood up. Come with me, she said. Keanu blinked, surprised. Are you sure? She nodded, her voice steady, stronger now. Yes. If the world wants a story, they can hear it from us, together. He stood too. There was a quiet power between them now. Something new, something real. They walked toward the door. Side by side. No secrets, no hesitation, no silence holding them back. But just as Sandra reached for the doorknob, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message made her stop breathing. There has been a change in your aunt's condition. Please come immediately. The world outside could wait. Love would be tested once more. The love they finally chose. The drive back to the hospital felt endless. The city moved outside the windows, but Sandra felt as if she were suspended between past and future. Keanu drove, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes forward focused, quiet, present. He didn't speak, because he knew she couldn't yet. Sometimes silence is not absence. Sometimes silence is love. When they walked into the hospital room, Sandra's aunt looked more peaceful than before, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Not just for Sandra, but for both of them. Her breathing was slow but steady. Her eyes opened when she heard them enter. Sandra sat beside her, taking her hand gently, her touch full of love, grief, and gratitude. Keanu stood close, not taking space, but sharing it. Her aunt looked between them with a faint smile. You came back together, she said softly. Sandra nodded, her voice a quiet whisper. Yes, I'm here. And so is he. Her aunt studied Keanu, her gaze clear despite her weakness. You always saw her, even when the world only saw her brightness. Keanu swallowed, his voice low and sincere. She has always been the light. Sandra's tears slipped down her cheeks, not from pain this time, but from something softer, something like acceptance. Her aunt spoke gently, each word slow and fragile. Don't wait for the right moment. The right moment is the one you choose. Sandra leaned forward, placing her hand gently on her aunt's cheek. Thank you for everything, she whispered. Her aunt smiled, the kind of smile that comes from a life full of love. Live, my girl. Really live. And then, slowly, peacefully, she let go. The room fell quiet. Not sharp, not cold, soft, warm, full of memory, love, and release. Sandra cried quietly, her body folding forward, grief moving through her like a tide. Keanu knelt beside her, his arms around her, holding her without forcing comfort. He didn't tell her to be strong. He didn't tell her it would be okay. He simply stayed. There's a love in staying. Hours passed. They walked outside into the fading light of evening. The sky was painted in soft colors: lavender, gold, fading blue. The world felt slower, gentler. They sat on a bench near the entrance, side by side. Sandra wiped her tears, her breathing steady now. I think I've spent my whole life loving people who were leaving me, she said. But you're still here. Keanu looked at her, his eyes full of something deep and unwavering. I've always been here, even when you couldn't see it. She turned toward him fully. For once, there was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation, no distance. I love you, she said softly, simply, clearly. Keanu's chest rose with a breath that seemed to lift years of silence from him. I love you too, he replied, with no trembling, no doubt, just truth. No music swelled, no grand gestures, no dramatic kiss under city lights. He simply took her hand, slow and gentle, like something sacred. And she let him. They walked together into the night side by side, not holding on out of fear, but choosing each other with open hearts. The world would talk. The media would chase. People would assume and create stories. But none of that mattered anymore, because this time, they weren't hiding their love. They weren't protecting it with silence. They weren't afraid of what might break. They were choosing to live it. Together,